go ahead and let's start. Okay. Why don't you start?
Let's get started. My name is Kibo Han. I'm a faculty of Biomimetic Cactus, committee member of our lecture committee. And I'd like to welcome Thomas Kosbau for today's lecture on Precedent's current work of redesign technology. And he is he has been invited as a keynote speaker at the AIA Oregon Design Conference that's happening in this week. And so he's been very generous to come here to give us lecture. So, and also the IHAB Aliati will introduce him to you. But before we start, I have a few announcements for you guys. We have a really great workshop happening tomorrow. It's a really great opportunity for those of you who are interested in biomimicry design, also how to transform your academic career into the professional career. He's going to talk about his experience of transforming his academic career into professional career. So it's going to be extremely informative for you guys. So if you are interested in doing, participating in that workshop, there's a sign-up sheet back there. So I strongly encourage you to sign up. So it's a really great opportunity to involve in discussions about how you can be successful in professional field. So he's going to really stress about that experience with you. So I hope you have that opportunity. Yes.
What time is the workshop?
Workshop starts from 9 o'clock tomorrow morning until 12 o'clock. But if you still some time conflict, come in and join that workshop. It's going to be really, really great experience for you guys. So there's a sign-up sheet back there. The room number is 279 tomorrow from 9 to 11:50. Also, we have the great the lecture series coming up May 4, Friday, 5:30 and 11:50. Lecture by Rick Pierce. He's in China right now, but he's going to give us an online lecture. So it's a teleconference lecture, so it's a really great opportunity to meet a renowned designer. And also that lecture is sponsored by Ecological Design Center. We have another lecture coming up, May 8, Tuesday, 6 p.m. A lecture by Umberto Indo. He's going to talk about smart living, the 2000 watt society, which is the exhibition, traveling exhibition happening in Portland, and that lecture is sponsored by the Switzerland Embassy. So it's a really good opportunity to see that lecture. And also May 11th, Friday, we have another lecture by Kang Kapka at 5:30 and 206 Lorenzo Hall. And he is a visiting professor from the University of Wisconsin, and he's going to give us a lecture. So those are upcoming events, and I'd like to invite the entire.
Thanks, Gil. Thank you all. Thanks for coming. And it's really my pleasure to introduce Tom. Tom was a very memorable student at the UVO here, and time has gone fast, and it seems that Tom is running a lot because he amassed a lot of projects, lots of work in the last few years. There's a recent article in the Sunday issue of the New York Times which reported actually on a long study by neurologists, psychologists, and human physiologists. They were studying mice, and they were mostly interested in the development of the brain. And their study was looking at, they put 4 groups of mice, one of them in a very lush environment, giving them all the food that they want, flavored water, nice architecture, everything that you can imagine. And the other group, we gave them the same kind of thing as the first group, but with the addition of a wheel, a mice wheel that they can run in it. And then the 2 other groups had the very drabby environment. Also, one of them didn't have anything, and the other one just had the wheel. And the results of the study showed that the group that were having a nice environment actually showed a little bit better performance or brain development, which was good. But then, most importantly, every group that has the wheel actually had an enormous brain development and cognitive development. And the motto of the story, as the New York Times put it, is that you have to run, and you have to run fast. It's the benefits of running. And that, when I kind of read that story and kind of knew of Tom coming, things kind of sparked and connected, because there are three things in that story that really I thought that relate to Tom and actually connected with his work. The first thing is, of course, running, because I mean, Tom was running, or has been running, maybe not literally, but on his computer, kind of on his laptop, maybe running a lot of things, and accomplished in a very few years, couple of years, from 2009, since the inception of this firm, a lot of awards and a lot of projects, kind of mentioning some would be the decal market made from recycled containers and materials, the River Park Farm in New York, which is New York's first rooftop farm, and then a Biomimetic Cactus that harvests drinking water from the air. Really very impressive projects in a very short duration of time. The second kind of aspect to it is that the relationship between science and architecture, and that in a way our field is kind of looking for connections and inspiration, and Tom has been one of the students that was always kind of looking with his peripheral vision, not kind of very myopic about what our field is, but actually all the things that architecture need to incorporate it in. And that definitely is something that we need to look at our field, about how kind of all these connections, architecture could be the incubator of many of these ideas from science and technology. That kind of interest from Tom started early as a student. I observed, his progression in the energy revolution competition, which won first place in a student competition in Manchester, and had to do with kind of producing or kind of self-sustaining zero energy housing made by converting algae or hydrogen from algae into sources of energy. And also the connection, or actually the connection that he's going to give one of the keynote speakers at the AIA Design Conference in Sandstone is really good proof about what kind of Tom is kind of achieving, and what Tom is actually thinking about new ways to connect architecture. And then the third and most important part is that there's a cool factor to that story. That story actually attracted a lot of people. It was the #1 hit on the New York Times site over the weekend, and it's the most emailed. And that kind of reminded me of the work and attention that Tom had in the last couple of years. He won the first place in the IIDA International Competition in Korea, and the Turnbull Design Prize for his net zero energy visualization system. So please welcome with me, Tom Kosbau.
Thank you very much, Ihab. And I could definitely benefit from a physical wheel. I was saying the things that had changed the most, probably in this, well, besides this room, was me, since I was here last. But yeah, lots of computer time. So thanks everybody for coming. Just going to talk about ore, essentially how it started, especially how University of Oregon had an effect on how ore started. This is going to continue, I think, a little more precisely tomorrow when we meet for the workshop. But I'll dive right in. So this is the first project that I worked on with Ihab while I was a student here as an independent research project. He just mentioned involving algae. This was, I think, the first remnant of ore kind of emerging from the ether, essentially emerging from all of the work that we were working on and the different ideas we were pulling together. This was, I think, the most kind of finite focused result of that period. This is the project as you can see it modeled. It's a housing unit. You can notice that it's got a green enclosure. This green enclosure is actually a second skin of aqueous algae panels. You can see on the left-hand side there a flow diagram. That algae actually flows through each of these modular tanks, and as it's flowing through this, it's being starved of oxygen and of sulfur. This was a effect that was actually discovered in Germany in 1912, and since then has been continually researched. It's 100,000 times more effective now in terms of its hydrogen rate or production rate than it was in 1912, of course, but it's still about 5 to 10 years away from really being market feasible. Jumping ahead of myself. What it does when it's starved of oxygen and starved of sulfur is it, instead of producing carbon dioxide, it produces hydrogen, pure hydrogen. which in this model, we are farming at the cellular level, cellular being the building unit cells. And we are transporting that into a containment area in the basement, which burns it for power and heat. This is an image that we found striking. When we came across the research, and again, back to ore and its name, ore really came into being, I think, with this project, or really first surfaced with this project, because this was a raw potential we saw in, and I worked with another student named Tyson Gillard on this project, that we saw in its just research form, that this was a potential to gain energy with. But then we thought about, wow, you know, especially in Manchester, which is where the competition took place, how beautiful and how what an impact this chlorophyllite green would have as a skin to a building, and the light would just wash through, and how psychologically calming that'd be in a real dense urban environment. And Manchester, England is the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. It has like 6 trees. It's very dense and it's very full of brickwork. So they're putting an initiative in to bring more green, and we thought this was a very applicable solution. So this is a breakdown of essentially the potential energy, power, and water you could receive by cladding a housing unit like you saw. This is a housing unit for 4 different apartments inside for a total of 6 people. Estimated, and this is still kind of pen on paper, this has yet to be proven, estimated at today's current technological rates, you could power, with the amount of algae we have here, you could power enough for close to 200 people per complex. And that's at 3.5 kilowatt hours a day, which is an average that we took based off of Sweden and Texas. We took Sweden as the low point and Texas as the high point of energy consumption. This is it as a neighborhood block. This is more site specific, because this is actually in Manchester. It's a big parking lot, and they wanted to have public plazas. They wanted to have the public plazas be reachable and have some inflection to the urban spaces. This next project actually started at U of O as well. Is when I transferred up to the Portland program. But Jim Pettinari was the program director. It was for a seminar to do urban furniture. And the urban furniture, I thought, had already been taken care of. There were plenty of lights and plenty of park benches and whatnot. But what I saw in Portland was there was a lot of garbage in the front of our building and every building down there, because people who were homeless needed it to sleep. But it wasn't something they could just pick up easily and take with them. It literally was cardboard or newspaper stuffings or whatnot. So every morning after a late night in the studio, we would emerge from the building and push our way through this garbage. And I thought, well, you know, why don't we come up with something which is a little more convenient for everybody, you know, especially a person who has to find a shelter at night. So I started thinking about a jacket that would convert into a tent and would supply, of course, shelter, but also have padding in the back, so that when you unfurl the back flap, you would have your own bed, and then it goes over and it protects you from the rain and the elements. Just a single person tent, lightweight. You're seeing umbrellas in this because this is the next evolution. This is literally the next year after I graduated from U of O in 2005. I flew to New York, and what I saw going back was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these everywhere. I mean, one, we don't use umbrellas here in the Pacific Northwest, so that was a bit of a culture shock. But 2, they have disposable umbrellas that are $2, $4 at bodegas, and they only last one hard rain, and then they turn into that. So after a hard rain, I would come out and I would see the streets littered with what looks like, you know, crash-landed insects. And I started thinking, it's like, what, you know, that is a tremendous waste, and what could be done with that? So that's my girlfriend, actually. I somehow convinced her to come with me and pick up about 40 of them after hard rain, and we washed them right away. And then we stripped, as you can see down here, we stripped the fabric from it into these triangles, and then we were able to reverse the triangles on themselves and make swatches of cloth. I did some very rudimentary, because I'm not a seamstress by any means, but I did a rudimentary drawing and pattern that we took to a seamstress and put together in a couple of days for this prototype. This is what we call home free. It's actually, just a side note, just been picked up by somebody in Sydney who wants to use it for their homeless population. So we're going to work with an Institute of Fashion Technology down there to make them readily available for, I think it's a group of about 200 homeless men in this area. And this is it in action. So it's coming out of the back of the jacket. It's being laid out. You can see the squares. You can see or the triangles. You can see that one was from a I Love New York umbrella. Consequently, about the same time, I moved to New York. Well, actually, literally, the day I moved to New York, I landed, and a friend of the family, who coincidentally is a director of open space greening program for Grow NYC. It's a nonprofit which takes essentially lots that were burned down during the 70s. Landowners of the neighborhoods were so bad, burned down their buildings for insurance money. So there are all these sand lots that look just like this that the community has access to now because the cities turned it over to their use to beautify it. This happened in the 80s, and some of them just sprouted up and gained money. This one actually, I don't know, this is a little bit before I think a lot of people's time, but if you've ever seen the Steven Spielberg movie, Batteries Not Included, it took place here. And there's actually another garden right here behind it which split the money, or was supposed to split the money, the Steven Spielberg money, with this group. Now these are all market rate apartments in the Lower East Side, which have become very expensive, and this is all Section 8 housing, which is public housing. The way the cards fell, this garden here somehow received all that money, and it became literally like a landscape garden to rival Capability Brown. It's got follies, it's got fountains and arbors and rose bushes, and this is how I found this side 10 years after the money had been awarded. Gerard Lordahl, the director of the program, was just showing me around because he was like, "Hey, your first time in New York, why don't you take a tour with me?" He showed me this, and he said, "We're trying to raise money from corporate donors, but we don't have any materials. Would you like to make some sketches, and maybe we can see if we can raise some money to develop this property?" So I came up with some sketches. He took them to Disney Corporation. They gave him $100,000, which was great. So then we started meeting with the community. And sidebar, this is all kind of moonlighting. I was working for another firm at the point. I was doing this pro bono, but it was definitely a strong experience of doing my own work. So we met with the community and with big pieces of butcher paper, and the first thing they asked for was a catapult so they could launch all of their garbage over into the other garden. And I said, well, maybe something else. They said, how about a 30-foot tall electrified fence? And I said, maybe something else. And so then they asked for a hot tub, and they asked for a fire pit and a dance floor and a movie theater and literally, quite a bit of program, much more than a 25 by 75 foot lot could sustain. But we ironed out what was, more in line with Grow NYC, again, the nonprofit that was managing the reconstruction of the space. What's more in line with their mission, which is growing, community growing, but also community space, dances and movie theaters and stuff like that's fine. Hot tub didn't make it. But what we did with this extensive laundry list of items, we started looking at, well, if we give them a huge paved area, we're not going to have enough growing space. So we started taking the growing space and making it vertical and aligning it around circulation so that you could have shade where the people could sit, and then more sun where, of course, the growing beds would be, which actually resolved itself quite nicely. This is another image of it. And this is the opening day before any plants were up. This is salvage, actually, mahogany. And this is just this is off-the-shelf steel that we had rolled and painted. But this is this is basically what they do in the garden 24/7 when it's good weather out. They have enormous cookouts, and it's a lot of fun. And this is another view of the covered seating area. We made this little trellis specifically for a 20-year-old grape that had been there since Batteries Not Included. And this is a view of the covered seating area in the back. And we also kind of, we told, the way that we could really convince them was we told them that this would be a visible barrier from their dance floor to the garden behind, which it successfully does without being 30 feet tall. And this is it today. So the same group, Grow NYC, was very happy with the pro bono work. Years later, coincidentally, right as I was starting OR, they came back and they said, we have a client for you. And that client was ARE, which is Alexandria Real Estate. They're an international corporation which does lab space. This is in Manhattan. This is essentially Murray Hill. There's the East River here. This is First Avenue. This is 29th Street. Bellevue Hospital, if you guys have been there, is right here. They had an installed site. Thanks to the current economy, 2008, there are quite a few. There are 600 installed sites in New York. And a lot of people are wondering what to do with it. They have a restaurant in the base of this building, which they were interested in converting into a farm. So they approached us and they said, what do you think? What can we do? This is the site that they gave us. It has this 12-foot tall wall all the way around because that's what the New York Department of Buildings requires for a stalled site. And you can see that the structures here is ready to receive a building that would mirror this. But that building, at the time, they had no idea how long it was going to be. So they said, well, let's make it something other than urban blight. We came up with a concept. Being that it had to be moved, we were resistant to the model which in Brooklyn. I don't know if anyone's seen Brooklyn Grange or Eagle Street Roof Farm. Very beautiful farms, but they're permanent applications. They just lay down their drainage mats and then 6 inches of soil, and then they start planting. This had one, this wasn't an actual roof. This is a floor slab that had a temporary membrane on it. But two, it had to be moved potentially in a year, potentially in 2 years. So we thought about a system that also could be recharged. Essentially, when this is harvested, you could go into the back of the house and you can grab one that's been growing and bring it back to recharge it, since this is a big public face. So we came across the milk crate. Seems like a very easy answer now, but it was like I say, a week of thinking about what would be perfect, whether we build wooden crates, whether we do this or that. And then we thought of this and we're like, oh, that's too simple. And so we looked for further solutions, but always came back. The milk crate was the best. This is the idea, essentially. We are prefabricating using the same seamstresses actually we used for the home free jacket. We're prefabricating a landscape sock of a 15-year rated weed barrier, which has great oxidation to roots and also retains water nicely. And then this is it executed. So this 6,000 crates were all transported actually in 2 days. They were grown off-site just because of the DOB was very resistant to us taking down that fence. So these got very large, and the farmer was getting very nervous about transporting them. When he transported them, the tomatoes were actually 5 feet tall. This is it. Last year, and they wanted a little dining area too. That's the dining area, and that's at night. We were able to take advantage of a couple things from lighting design. One, that this is a kind of a natural place to illuminate at night. But when we placed these down, we placed them on salvaged pallets, because we wanted them to sit even lighter and on the site, not obstruct any of the drainage, because they had a real drainage problem, and created a nice little opportunity for a light cove to wash the plants, or wash the pavers. This, like all of our projects, is 100% LED lighting.
Does that hurt the plant itself to have a light bulb so close to it?
It's an LED, so it's not hot. Yeah, that's a good question. And this actually, really, when Hurricane Irene came through, it was 5 days before the opening, and everyone was really nervous. But with a team of 10 volunteers, we moved the whole farm into the building, into the lobby. So we had a pop-up farm indoors for 2 days, and then back out. The total move took 5 hours. So it really made us feel great about the movability of these units. And again, kind of a sidebar, this is now being commercialized. We just sent an order to Japan. They want to start creating They really like the American crate. It's better than the metric crate, I think, in weight and strength. So we're commercializing this to Japan. We're doing another farm in Boston and a farm in Seattle, hopefully. This is the decal market. The same day we got the call, coincidentally, I was just telling Ehab, I started ore out of necessity at one point because I was working as a green energy consultant, and I came back from my vacation, and the green energy consultancy didn't exist anymore. As a victim of the economy. So I started getting serious about doing my side projects full time, and we got the farm call about 2 days after that. On the same day, we got a call from a group I've been speaking to just academically. I've been sitting on their review board and looking at different ideas. They asked me to formally do a proposal for this site. It's a stalled site in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn. Former mall, Albee Mall. This is, of course, the parking structure. It dead-ended right here. We wanted to keep this feature. We really wanted to keep this feature because we could have made it into an urban beach. But it ate up a lot of valuable real estate, so we had to get rid of it, unfortunately. We transported 84 shipping containers. 60 of them were prefabricated off-site with new openings and framing, steel framing, so we can transport it. And we created a pop-up market, which houses 120 design shops for local designers, makers in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is very similar to Portland in its kind of, I would say it's culture, it's designing culture. And it also has 20 restaurants inside of it. This is it on its opening day. And these are some of the design shops. And we were also asked to be project managers, and we ended up falling into general contracting. This is Sergio from my office right here. He was a bit of a wild man on the site. And that's it from above. So it's now its second year. It just won the Building Brooklyn Award last week from the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce for activating stalled sites. And that's it on its opening night. This is an example of residential work that we do. We are a commercial firm. I was saying just before this started that we're at about 60% commercial work and 40% research, and how we divide our time. We want to get much more towards 75% research. Hopefully the commercialization of the milk crate and other products that we're launching will lead to that. But projects like this are a pleasure. This was actually for a couple friends of mine who are graphic designers. They just had a new baby. It was essentially, this slot was a loft in a former commercial building on Madison, which is like Mad Men. It was right across the street from the Morgan Library by Renzo Piano. They bought an equal-sized loft next to them. They wanted to combine the two and fully renovate. The budget was exceedingly small, but the clients were very design conscious, and we were able to kind of work as we went, discover what we could find about the space to lower costs. The big boon was there was a terrible popcorn ceiling up here, and we went up there and scraped it off, and we decided that that was a really lovely texture that we could play off of. So we made everything else polished. We made all the sides, just gleaming white drywall, very clean finishes, a stained ebony floor, so that we could really highlight the ceiling as a kind of area of warmth. Another cost-saving measure was using prefabricated elements. These are, this wall is built entirely out of IKEA components. Without, of course, this frame. We were able to put in a frame that would allow for us to do this random stacking. They have a lot of little collectibles, and so we made this into a feature wall, which only cost $300 to build. This is more. This is again that ceiling, and it's 100% LED, just like the other projects. This is the Biomimetic Cactus that Ehab had mentioned. While I was at Golden, Colorado, talking to the National Renewable Energy Lab in 2007 about commercializing the algae panels, I was having a break at a bar, and was looking at the condensation of my glass, and it got me thinking about a couple of things I'd just seen. One was a supposition to, or one was the commercial application of plugging a water condenser in. It's essentially a refrigerator that you put outside on an industrial level, and it has a compressor, it has coolant, it requires a lot of energy, and it triggers the dew point in the air to harvest drinking water. And then I was thinking about this BBC Earth series where they had just gone to Chigunga, Chile, one of the driest places in the earth, and the only source of water in this desert community, although it's right next to the ocean, are the cacti. The cacti have these filaments, which when the clouds from the ocean gain quite a bit of elevation, they condense solely on the cacti. And so people, plants, animals, everything survives off of those. And so I started thinking about, you can see the evaporation from the ocean climbing in as it encounters the cacti, at least behind its vapor. I started thinking about a way that you could trigger the dew point at areas that didn't have this high elevation, but at areas all around the world, which are increasingly arid and coastal, which is the largest growth area for developing nations and populations, which are, of course, impacting and compounding water scarcity. A way to do what the commercial units would be doing, which is, of course, cooling the air so that it drops its water. The hotter the air is, the more water it can carry, is to think of a way to use natural elements, possibly as the heat sink. And I started thinking about the heat differential between below ground wells and above ground temperatures. And I started studying them using BBC weather and other sources of data, and decided that there's a model that using the cool, the oxidative heat energy, to exchange the heat with a series of copper alloys above ground, you could essentially trigger the dew point. And once that dew was left behind on those cooled copper alloy filaments, it would then, like a rain chain, drip down and refill the well. This exoskeleton you're seeing is serving dual purpose. It's a ceramic high gloss series of discs, so it's stackable. So if one breaks, you can replace it, but it's also you can make certain, we call these vena. It's a Latin root for water and coursing water. You can make vena taller based on kind of microclimatic elements, as well as a deeper well, for instance. But it also serves as a wind scoop. So it channels the air in, the air then circulates. As it's chilled, of course, it leaves this water behind, and then it goes on its way. This is a visualization of it. This is kind of an international-looking village. It's actually Bolivia in the background. And this is another visualization, so you can see that the copper alloy unfurls below ground, which gives a certain surface area exposed to the cool below-ground temperatures, which then balances and cools the above-ground copper alloy filaments, which again unfurl and are protected by this stainless steel perforated tube. And this is that ceramic shell I was saying. Protects the interior from heat gain and also serves as a wind scoop. These are some of the areas that we were looking at. Marty, we just found out we did not get the grant, unfortunately. But we're still in the running for a couple other grants for this. We have a nonprofit, or we have an NGO in Kenya who has been working with us to raise grant money to develop the first working prototype and take it to test. We were scheduled to test there this August, but we're probably going to have to delay it a year. Hopefully less than that, but it's definitely it's our main concentration at this moment with funding or raising funding is to get this up and running before the algae and before the other projects. Although they're all slowly working on their own too. This is it in an urban environment. This is Sana'a, Yemen, which we studied for an exhibition, the Out of Water exhibition. It was I think it was on the West Coast for a while. And here, this is just us looking at different areas. This study of Kenya said that based on the climatic the relative humidity and the heat differential between above and below ground temperatures, we have the potential to produce 8 to 10 liters a day per unit of fresh drinking water, which is a huge impact. And these are meant to be sold from anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 per unit. And they have, since they don't have any moving parts, they don't require electricity or coolants, the life expectancy without vandalism is very long. So it's an investment that we think is very worth it for NGOs and possibly UN. This is the Sandstone Road project that you have mentioned. It was the first place winner at the Incheon, Korea International Design Awards. My first studio in 2009 is in an area of Brooklyn called the Gowanus. It's one of the most polluted waterways in the world. And it has, not only has pollution in the water, it also has a lot of industry around it, which was great because I got a really cheap warehouse space that was converted into an office. But wasn't great was that it was next to a giant cement mixing complex, and that had trucks rumbling up and down the street every day, which would create literal waves, ripples in the asphalt in front of the, you've all seen it, I think, on bus malls. It really exposes how non-sustainable, not even speaking environmentally, but just how, what a weak material asphalt is, which added to my hatred of asphalt. So I went and I decided to find some facts of why I really hate asphalt, and I found quite a few health facts, quite a few energy and oil consuming facts, and urban heat island effect facts, and also rising cost facts, why this should be a non-ubiquitous material as it is today. What's particularly scary are the carcinogenic fumes which off-gas off it when it's 75 degrees and warmer, being that it's in front of every one of our houses. So I went and I started doing research, and I found the University of Davis's Soil Labs research when I was looking at another project by a student named Magnus Larsson, who had proposed an anti-desertification project in Africa, which I thought was really beautiful. But I thought, well, this could be the ticket to wean ourselves off of asphalt, and it's proving to be a very interesting material. It's using a bacillus, which is a naturally occurring bacteria that's found in wetlands worldwide. It's a hybridized bacillus to increase its metabolism, its metabolic rate. And what it does is it, if you see here, it literally knits sand, silica together with a composite which is very similar to bone. And so it grows organic sandstone, which is a permeable pavement and also a relatively high albedo pavement. So we did a sketch. This was a very small competition in terms of what they were requiring. They just wanted the 3 images. So we did the first images, kind of, as you see, the doomsday image in the sea of asphalt. And this as our solution. You can see this is what we call the sand cat, based roughly on a snow cat. It has a hopper with local sand, depending on your region, which would then feed onto the treads, a full tread width, compact underneath their brush, and then be sprayed down by a mixture of Bacillus pasteuri and a metabolic agent. Currently, you can actually, these are 4-inch layers. We were doing some talking with some people in this research area that 12 inches would suffice to drive on. The curing time at the moment is the limiting factor why this is not already a technological revolution on how we create streets. You can create pedestrian pathways, no problem, but at the moment it would take months for this to cure, for traffic to go on. But that is changing. It's getting faster. And this is, of course, the image of the new world paved in sandstone, and all the health benefits, and cooler urban heat islands. We do a lot of industrial design too, as kind of fun projects. We try and tie it into our work as much as possible in salvaged materials. This is an idea that we had when we read about the 80 or so subway cars which are decommissioned from the MTA, the Metropolitan Transit Authority in New York, every year. and stripped and then literally dropped off barges off the coast of New Jersey and Connecticut to create artificial reefs. We thought, well, what happens to the material? Does it just go to scrap heap? Is it melted down? What is it? Is there an easier way just to modify it slightly and reuse it, possibly for something for transportation? You see where I'm going? So we got our hands on some raw material, and this is actually just cut and fabricated as the prototype. And this is the bike rack we created. It'll hold easily 5 to 6 bikes. For the photo shoot, we thought one was nicer looking, but it's a continuous knot which provides two areas of locking at any angle. We're actually speaking with Albina Metals, which are out of Wilsonville, Oregon. They have a machine that can make these with one piece of metal and one weld. They have a 3D CNC bender. So they told us they could do it for a very good price. So I think we might take this to market soon. This is the Drylands competition. This is, of course, the LA River. We weren't actually thinking about the LA River specifically, but we've been toying with technology using wave energy from the ocean to desalinate seawater. So the seawater, or the sea itself, would power its own transformation into fresh water. But this is specifically for California. So we took a look at what we had to work with, and what we had to work with was some infrastructure, civic infrastructure, which we found kind of problematic. All the green area here, this is based on our proposal, not existing. All the green area here is necessary for us to do what we want to do in the blue area here, and I'll get into that in a second. The green area are vernal pools. LA gets 14 inches a year of rain, which doesn't seem like a lot, except that it all happens more or less at once, and it happens on impervious surfaces. So it rushes down the LA River like a tidal wave, and it actually kills people. And it seems like a tremendous waste in a desert. I mean, LA gets 14 inches, and Jerusalem gets 13 inches a year, so they're very comparable. Jerusalem is very careful about their water, and whatever they get, they store. LA, with its vast aqueduct system, has not been as careful, but the aqueduct system is reaching another end of its life. And we can talk about that in the workshop. So we thought, well, first, the easy idea is to recreate a natural typology in California, which is a vernal pool. These were all around the California landscape before industrial agricultural happened, and they're very, very lush, very eco-rich kind of bastions. Essentially, it's a dry water, or it's a dry weather basin. But when the rain comes, it sprouts to life and harbors many species. Lots of shrimp hibernate underneath them, and endangered species only come to life essentially during the rainy season. So in all the green areas here, we propose just creating micro-perforations along the LA River with the effect that not a single drop of fresh water will reach the ocean. It'll all be stored along the edges, which the edges are not populated. They're actually highways and easements, so they're already green, but they're essentially, they have this big barrier here, and we're proposing to create an opening and then allow them to flood. With that being said, we have a portion of the LA River which would be dry as a bone all year round. We propose to create a dam at right here, actually, and to keep the seawater from flowing back in once this is dry. And then we are proposing a series of pumps. These pumps, of course, are just like a bicycle pump, have a pontoon on the top. When a wave goes by, their action goes up and down. And just like a bicycle pump, they pump seawater into this area which has been made empty by these vernal pools. They're pumped through a system of polycarbonate trome walls. And the trome walls, of course, as we learned in ECS, are a way to capture and use heat energy from the sun. These top pipes, for instance, are the supply coming directly from the ocean. They're about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. They span all the way down and then they return. And as they return, they reach a temperature running through these trome walls themselves somewhere between 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And as they're warmed, of course, then they drop their water into the trome wall. Trome wall could be anywhere from 120 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, causing evaporation. That evaporation of the seawater then climbs with its hot air and engages or comes in contact with the supply of the seawater, which is, of course, encased in piping, so it doesn't literally come in contact with the seawater, but with a cold piping, where it condenses and drips into gutters, and then is then gravity fed into the infrastructure, some of which can be diverted into a farm. Because we figured we had all this dry space, let's create local agriculture. And this is essentially that diagram, showing how it works. This is our visualization of what the LA River could be. It's kind of a portion now where we're going to go far into the future. A lot of our, as I said before, a lot of our work, the commercial work that keeps us in business and keeps us, I think, sharp, because we constantly have to prove what we say, but we spend a lot of time looking at projects like this, which was a proposal for infrastructure in the UK for 2050, and that rang, that was music to our ears. So we started looking into technology. Essentially, it was a competition to replace this. This is the current day high tension pylon, and they have 83,000 of these throughout the UK, which are made of steel, which is, no matter what kind of coating you put on it, slowly rusting. They are getting tired of replacing these, and they realize that's not, it's entropy at work, and it's a losing battle, and it's better to come up with a solution now than have to replace them over the next 50 years. So they put out a call for entries of new materials. We started looking at a technique in Japan, which is just still in the laboratories right now, just budding, which is to convert CO2 into carbon fiber. And we suppose that by 2050, this would be at a level that we could actually use as a building material. So our design was to take, and we figured that the UK's natural resources are still coal, quite a bit. Over 60% of their power still comes from coal, even with all the wind farms. That even by then, we would still have a certain amount of coal being burnt. We could use the off-gassing of the CO2s, and we could scrub it from the air and turn it into a building material, so that the energy that's being produced and being transmitted along these lines would actually be building its own infrastructure, growing its own infrastructure from carbon fiber. We also suppose this is 2050 that we would have robots that could act as spiders, essentially, to manufacture these. So we created an algorithm to spin these, not totally based on spiders, but based on what we thought was kind of a sequence of spinning simplified this direction. So this is the carbon fiber pylon. We also felt that the way that we could spin these carbon fibers, essentially these structural members, we could allow for habitat to be reclaimed from, this is the osprey, it's an endangered British bird. We could create natural habitat within our infrastructure. More birds. Also 2050. This is an interesting project, not just, I think, because what it's turned into in this incarnation, but we started out thinking 2050, it was a proposal from Japan to create a new glass typology. What could glass do in 2050? Is it stronger? Is it lighter? Is it unbreakable? What does it do? This is a form that we had been playing with in a few other projects that I'm not showing today in lighting, and that having a single source. Actually, this kind of started here too, at U of O, and the lighting lab. We did a PVC chandelier. It's along the same concept. Yeah, along the same concept. We have a single light source at the base, rather than having a light source up here for a variety of reasons. What we wanted to happen here was that you would have what we're thinking is about 200 watt LED disc, which is a very bright LED disc, would wash light up in the interior, and we wanted that single source to also transmit, almost like a fiber optic, but we don't want this to be solid because that would be an extreme amount of material to use. So we started thinking, how could this happen? This is what we want. How could it work? So this is a section diagram of what we wanted, and this is essentially showing the research that we found. We went back to 1970s lasers and how they were able to amplify light in the beginning. It was very, very simple. Well, not simple to us, but to the laser industry now, it was very, very simple machinery. And having an ion emitter doping glass was one way that they could increase the amplitude of light. Every time the light would encounter an angle of incidence or refract or reflect through this ion doped glass, it would increase in amplitude. So we thought, well, not only so our glass revolution is not only that it's a stronger glass, so we can do a tube shape like this by 2050, but this disk, which is producing visible light, is also producing invisible ions, which are doping the glass all the way up, essentially being like a laser pump, so that you have this light being under our control all the way. So it increases amplitude. We still have a high output out here. We can play with the properties of the glass too, so that it's more transparent at the pedestrian base, and then it's more opaque from the outside here, so you don't have as much light pollution. And there's a visualization of it. This was another reason we started with this, and it was more this image in our mind that this could become a paper lantern just by the advertisements that are posted to it before we even started looking at the technology. But once we did, we got very excited by the technology. This is it showing it from above, that there's not as much light spillage as with a conventional street lighting system. I'm briefly just going to say the implications of this afterwards were much more exciting than this physical model in terms of what we could do with bringing daylight into a building if we could amplify it. If we could have an atrium at the center of a building and we could have ion doped glass, could you feasibly bring it down and bring an amplified daylight 20 stories into a building? We showed this to a lighting designer who's very excited by it. So this is in the works. This is the first time we're showing it. This is a commercial project we're working on at the moment. This is the end of the presentation. Just kind of showing what we're working on in terms of the commercial side. This is a penthouse rooftop that we're doing for one of our clients for their private house in Chinatown. And they came to us saying that they wanted a tea house on their terrace made out of a water tower. We thought, okay, we could do that. That's great. We visited the terrace and we said, where's the water tower? And they said, oh, it's not here. We don't have a water tower. And so we thought, well, it's going to be extremely hard to get a water tower up here. And it doesn't really make sense if there's no water tower to create a fake one. So instead, we were able to compromise. We would use the wood from disassembled water towers, and we would create these screens, which would then culminate in a tea house here. They also have a fire pit, which they don't like their neighbors knowing they have. So we're creating these like Richard Serra-esque screens out of salvaged water towers in CNC'd profiles. This is another view of it in the interior. It's under construction right now. It'll be built in I think about 4 weeks. It'll be finished. This is the biggest project we have at the moment. This is what was keeping me up late last night. We are currently talking to the mayor's office in New York as part of the client whose penthouse you just saw, part of her firm, has asked us to do a proposal for the biggest armory in the world, which happens to be in the Bronx. It's the Kingsbridge Armory. It's been not an armory for 60 years, and it's been empty for 15 years. There have been many proposals of what to do with it. The communities actually had almost full control over what's going to go in there. They originally, well, 5 years ago, Bloomberg backed a proposal to put a mall in there, and the community said, no, malls aren't what the Bronx are about. So we are showing, it's the same client that we did Dekalb Market with, the shipping container market. So we're going to have a marketing component, mostly the space, because it's 1.5 city blocks inside of a, it's actually similar to the Greyhound station you did, E-Hub, down in San Francisco. It's got a huge flex space, and there was almost too much space. It's 600,000 square feet, and to find the RFP, the request for proposal that the city put out was trying to find a financial package that made it convincing that it would be a viable business venture, because they don't want to just give it to somebody who's not going to survive. So putting the program in, we decided that the main drill floor, this amazing space, this 110-foot ceiling on the interior there, needs to remain open and unbuilt. We're working with NVRDV on this project. This is their, I don't know if you're familiar with their tribunes. They do these orange staircases. They've inserted that there, which is going to cover an area for an anchor retail tenant and a movie theater and a series of restaurants. And that's not even all the way to the ceiling. That's only 60 feet high. You have another 50 feet above you. And then the rest is going to be incubator, market stalls, and soccer exhibition matches. That's it. Thank you very much.
So many incredibly diverse ideas here, and I was sort of just wondering what the process is like in your studio, like the research process, and how you're bringing all that research into these really amazing design ideas.
A lot of the ideas are, I would say, pre-formulated before they get to any of these projects, and we look for, and that's actually kind of what we're going to talk about tomorrow in the workshop, because a lot of these are just the aha kind of idea, or that's intriguing, and then we look for vehicles in the form of competitions to turn them into projects. So I think that's why they're so varied, because we just kind of identify little things that we find kind of interesting, whether they're natural properties or like I said, even with the light, we just had this image of this, almost like this drinking straw that was illuminated. And I think that's why they come out very, very diverse. And that had a lot to do with why OR came about. It wasn't just an architectural practice. It's design and technology. That name is pretty kind of open-ended, but I think it covers what we do. And that's, once OR came into kind of conception in 2009 as a real entity, it was great because it really felt like a strengthening of all these random projects. It was a way to encompass all of them. Yeah, we're constantly telling our commercial clients what we do, and I think they're always surprised. Yeah.
So you kind of talked about how your firm does research work on one half, and then you do mostly research work, and then you do commercial work on the other side. Is there ever any opportunity for overlap between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the research skill that we're developing or honing, with our own projects, definitely overlap in areas like River Park. When we came up with that, I mean, we didn't invent the milk crate by any means, but when we saw it as a technological nutrient, we were like, oh, we can use this, and we were able to adapt it kind of quickly, like we would with another piece of research that we would do to maybe a further customization. But because it was a commercial project, we kind of was like, okay, well, this fits the bill. It also fits the price tag. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and also I was wondering your research process. Mm-hmm. So you kind of just said it's like a brainstorming kind of thing. Is there kind of is there a division where you have a group of people researching things related to one thing? Does that make sense? So instead of a bunch of random ideas being formulated, is it more organized?
I want to say it's more organized, but it's not. Not yet. It will be soon. Look at firms like Yves Bahar or whatnot. I think they really make creative energy or creative brainstorming a valuable commodity to their clients much better than we do, and that's the skill we have to learn. But it's such like a burgeoning little portion of our. Well, it's a burgeoning skill that we have essentially. The commercial work is very straightforward for us in a way, but figuring out how to commoditize the other side is the challenge, but it's fun.
When you talk about we, how many are you?
We're 4 full-time people now. Yeah. very, very overworked 4 people. Yeah. But it's also the sign of the times, honestly. It's like a small, powerful, powerful I say in that we stay up late, a small group of designers with low overhead, extremely marketable to our clients. They really, I think they like that we're young and we're enthusiastic, and we've been getting a lot of resonance with clients because of that, but I think also it's just the price tag. We are extremely less expensive than larger design firms, but I think in a lot of cases we come up with similar results.
Well, the other people you've known from the University of Oregon?
Yeah, actually one I grew up with in Portland. John Van Sprecher, he was a Master's of Architecture student. I think he graduated in 2008 here at the University of Oregon. But I knew him before that, but happy coincidence.
Yeah, actually, yeah. My question was going to be sort of the same, but also just how did the whole team get together? Can you tell more about that?
I got very lucky with the people I found through recommendation, essentially. It started with me in an office and my dog. And our conversations were good, but it soon became obvious I needed to expand, and so then I placed out, and the design community in Brooklyn is fantastic. It's really, and in Portland, they're very similar. It's like everybody knows everybody, so if there are really talented people that a certain firm can't give enough work to, then they are essentially almost loaned out through recommendation, and you can find great people that way. So I've just been lucky finding strong people, and we've gone through quite a few people also, not in a bad way, but we are looking for kind of that really like magic recipe of someone who wants to do architecture, but somebody who's also wanting to for 2 days a week build a bike rack or do a lot of different stuff, or just research or grant writing. So
you're all in an office space, or you're close together so you can communicate?
We all have an office. We have a formal office in Brooklyn in Dumbo, which is in a building that's got, I think, 15 architecture firms in it, and the neighborhood has like 100 architecture firms in it. That's the community that's there. It's pretty exciting. Yeah.
It's incredible to see these kind of forefront ideas of these whole different technologies. It seems like, to me, it's like a studio work that the students usually can do in academic setting.
Yeah.
But it's incredible to see how you can really make that one in reality. So how did you, because might be a big gap between existing architectural community and what you're doing right now, and how my question is, how can you make that happen in real situations? So how could you balance those two?
So a lot of them aren't in reality yet. They're being developed on paper, but we don't consider them real until the prototype happens. We have people who are very interested in investing in Vina, for instance, the water collector, but we are kind of reticent to sell it until we have documented testing on it, which in a way is slowing us down a little bit, but I guess it's because we haven't done it before, we're so young, we're a little cautious about selling the property rights to it. We want to develop it through grant writing, and I guess this is a roundabout way of answering your question, is that to make it a reality, we have to find funding, and we went through USAID just recently to get funding for the working prototype of Vina, the water harvester. We are entered in 2 other competitions which provide seed money for it. We're a finalist in one. We're waiting to hear back in a couple of days to see if we're making it to the final round, or the final round. But the research is just being solely paid for by the commercial work. So that's where a lot of our profits are going. And it's
Some of it has to be paid back.
eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah, I think so. That's what's driving us. We may we may be investing, almost 100% of our profits back in the business, but it's really to do what we want to do, which is, like I said, to make it much more like a 75% research and design firm that does architecture for the other way around.
So where do you see your firm growing? You said 75% research, 25% commercial work. Do you see like the model of the Eames, for example, the model of Eames as a studio shop where it was really an ideas firm, right? You go to the Eames because you want to make the next great chair, versus you go to an Eames because you need to kind of repurpose the site or make a building here. So do you see that is the model that you're going for, or was the model that you're aiming for is that you come up with your own research and try to sell it? And that's two different things, because essentially you're trying to create your own problem, your own solution, versus kind of coming with someone else bringing you a problem, landing it on your desk, and you researching and designing the solution.
I never thought of the Eames model before, but that would be great. That would be, I think that'd be a really good life. The second model, though, I think it's to be mixed between the two. Is what that people would come to us with design problems, and that would be refreshing because it would be, it would increase our creative gene pool, essentially, things that we hadn't thought about, because we're only limited by ourselves. But yeah, we like to identify the problem as part of the design as well. And to begin with, that's kind of fun to not invent it, but identify it, and then think of something to do with it. So I'd say mixed. Fine. It's a big open answer, but that'd be great. I would love for I would love for like an industrial or a large corporation to come and ask us to design this, design the mouse, right. And then come up with a different way of thinking about it.
How did you come up with your company's name?
Well, definitely its roots in Oregon. But then, like I said, the question before about all the kind of disparate work, how it's from all different sources, I think the commonality is that it all kind of came into our process as like an unrefined creative potential. It came across our radar, whether it's in our active research or just day-to-day through the industry. We see something which we kind of store away, has a direct application later, and then we refine it to like a competition. And that's what I meant by we have all these ideas that we fill notebooks with, and then we see a competition which allows us to develop it, just like the dry lands. We were going to make actually dry lands into a skyscraper. In Abu Dhabi, we were going to do a vertical, but then we thought LA doesn't need a skyscraper on the water. So then what do they have? Well, they have a huge piece of infrastructure, so let's just repurpose that. But it was the technology was kind of waiting to be developed. You got a question out there?
Oh, it was about how big the company is and how you guys, where you plan to go.
Yeah, I was explaining earlier, we're experiencing growing pains right now. We have a good team, but they're sadly overworked. And we'll see. Next year's going to be very exciting. Win or lose. Yeah.
Just curious, as you grow, do you think you'll continue to look for more designers to bring in, or do you think you might also bring in other disciplines to your firm?
We just hired a grant writer because we figured we need to learn how to do that better. Engineer would be welcome. Because right now we just kind of talk to our friends who are engineers to kind of bounce the ideas off them. Is this going to work? Is this foolish? They always say it's science fiction, but then they're always intrigued. I was like, it could work. 50 years. I think definitely more designers. Because our background is so kind of diverse, and the training that you get here, and you can do whatever you want afterwards. I know. Do you guys remember Nick Van Wert? Remember him? He's now a really famous sculptor. Yeah, he's got a huge building in Brooklyn. I was having a, this is a student that I went to school here, named Nick Van Wert. You should look up his work. It's very impressive. But yeah, I just ran into him on the street coming from a client meeting, and like, what are you doing? I was like, doing stuff. You want to check out my space? And I checked it out, and it was like bigger than this area, and he had like, like 5 guys in there like working on these huge sculptures. And he's like, yeah, this is my space. Yeah, he sells out shows in Paris. He's doing fantastic. This is random, but he was very proud. He showed me that he bought all of Ted Kaczynski's possessions, and he had them all laid out. He had no idea what he wanted to do with them, but he's just like, yeah, it's just weird, right? So yeah, I mean, architects are great for doing whatever. The training is you go into anything afterwards.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so we'll continue things going on for tomorrow. So we'll do the workshop with the final sheet upstairs right there. So make sure you sign up. So really quick.
Thank you. Yeah. It was a lot. Oh, you do? Thank you so much. Yeah.